Let's take a look at another 25 mark question for paper 1. And this one is on organic and external growth, but in the context of the strategy of market penetration. Here's our question. Some businesses grow by using takeovers of competitors. Is external or organic growth the best method for a business to succeed with a strategy of market penetration? So as always, we unpick the question, and this one is about that choice, if you like, isn't it, between organic and external growth. Different methods of growth, but in the context of how and why they might work or succeed for a strategy of market penetration. So one of the 4 strategies from Ansov's matrix is being referred to in the question. So our arguments need to explain how and why either external growth or organic growth might help a strategy of market penetration succeed. So we don't need to be talking about diversification, market development, product development. It's market penetration. 25 marks, of course, we need balance, a balance of our arguments, a balanced judgments that's supported by your arguments, but also, of course, application throughout. And in particular, constantly referring back to the evaluation hook, which I think in this question really is the best method. Which is the best method? And this question really invites you to consider the merits of external growth to achieve market penetration compared with the merits of organic growth to achieve market penetration, which is the best. So as always, you put together maybe for 30 seconds a minute, a quick plan, nowhere near as detailed as this, but I just wanted to outline the thought process I went through before I had to go answering this question. So this isn't meant to be the kind of plan you'd write on your paper 1. I don't have enough time to write this much. These are really the introduction lines to my arguments and conclusion. The introduction, the idea here is to give the examiner a sense of direction. Where is your response going? So we'll see an example of that in a second, so you can read that for yourself on the screen. I'm going to argue basically that I think organic growth is the best method compared with external for market penetration. And my basic argument there is that there are lots of options for organic growth for many businesses in many situations, such as opening new locations, increasing distribution, spending more on promotion, so launching new products. So I am going to argue the case for organic to say that that's actually a very effective, perhaps the best way. And then my counter arguments to say actually external growth can be very effective for market penetration in some situations, and explain how and why that is. And in particular, focusing on synergies where you're buying a competitor, because that's basically what's happening, isn't it? With a strategy of market penetration, you're likely to be buying, well, you are buying a competitor. So that will be my counter argument, and then I come back to my judgment and I'll try to argue that the case for organic, but recognising the alternative, and try to just add a little bit of extra value into my conclusion. Shall we have a look at an example answer to this one? By all means, pause the video at this stage. Maybe you have a go at writing a paragraph or an introduction or the whole thing. I think it's best not to practice writing too many long answers like this, but maybe planning what the answer is going to be. Maybe just a plan, or maybe one of the arguments, just to practice writing those. Anyway, enough of that. Here's my introduction. Just one sentence, that's all that's needed. The examiners have said that students who do well in 25 markers often give them a strong sense of where their essay, their response is going to go. It suggests that you've planned it, doesn't it? It's quite hard to write an introduction if you've not planned where you're going. So well worth thinking about doing that. Here's mine. Although external growth can be an effective way to increase market share, which is market penetration, it is a risky approach, and for most businesses, the better lower risk way to achieve market penetration is likely to be through organic growth. So the examiner can see I'm basically going to argue that organic growth is the best, and that's where my first argument needs to go to. So I think with your first argument, support your introduction, support your likely judgment. So we use the pecan pie approach as quite an efficient way of responding to these. I mean, you don't have to use that, but I think it's a good way. It means you end up writing better developed points, but writing fewer points and writing less, and hopefully really staying focused on the question. So here's my first line, my PE, the point explained. In many situations, organic growth is the best way to succeed with market penetration. Why? As it involves less risk and provides different ways to grow market share. So there's lots of different ways of growing market share in a low risk way. My first full stop is important there. No application, no further analysis. That is the point I'm going to develop. Only then do we bring in our contextualized analysis. And there I've highlighted some of the analysis in black and some of my application actually in red, just to show you how I've tried to use examples. Let's read through it. A strategy of market penetration implies that a business is already operating in a specific market or industry. That's true, isn't it? And that the business objective is likely to be an increase in market share, which is also true. So for many businesses, organic growth provides a variety of different methods, or you could say many different methods, of selling more existing products to existing customers. So I don't need to define what market penetration is. I've written about existing products, existing markets, existing customers. That essentially is market penetration. Indeed, Anseth argued that such a strategy is relatively low risk, since businesses should know their market and customers well and be able to adjust the marketing mix to help increase market share, assuming, of course, that they are competitive in the market. So I now need to explain how and why organic growth a little bit further with an example or two. I've made the case for saying it's a low risk, effective way. But how does that work? So my examples help illustrate the analysis, don't they? So for example, opening new locations, expanding distribution channels, or increasing the amount spent on promotion might all help increase market share. Now at the minute, that's still analysis, using knowledge to underpin the analysis. I need some examples. So businesses such as Aldi and Lidl have shown that through rapid expansion of new stores, rather than just locations, organic growth is highly effective for market penetration, despite facing intensive competition from the likes of Tesco and Asda. Another example to help illustrate the power of organic growth. Similarly, in the streaming market, Netflix and Disney Plus have invested heavily in the development of their platforms and shows. So I could have, rather than saying I've invested in new product development, industry-specific language, their platforms and their shows, and spent heavily on promotion to capture market share rather than to try to take over competitor streaming businesses. So I've made the case. My analysis is contextualized. My little slice of pie sentence at the end, just tries to get a little bit of evaluation to this argument. So although organic growth might not provide the overnight transformational increase in market share like a big takeover, i.e. external growth, it gives businesses many opportunities to penetrate markets successfully. So there we go. I think it does it. I mean, you could have developed it further. You could have used different examples, but that argument basically makes the case for organic growth as being a good method, perhaps the best method to achieve a strategy of market penetration. Okay, let's have a look at the counter argument. I've made the case for organic. Now I need to flip it over and make the case for external. So here's my PE, my point explained. However, using external growth, by the way, using however is a good way of showing that you are now into your balancing or counterbalancing argument. However, using external growth can be an effective way to achieve market penetration, particularly where there is strong potential synergy with the business being bought or merged with. So I'm going to really try to make an example of synergies here to help explain how that might lead to successful market penetration. So sometimes a business wants to grow market share quickly and significantly. In these situations, external growth might be a better strategy than organic. Why? This is because it's a great way of explaining and developing your argument. This is because external growth, such as a takeover or merger of competitors in the same market, is likely to involve the combination of two businesses with similar strengths as well as two market shares. If the potential for cost and or revenue synergies is significant, which is likely to be the case where we're looking at horizontal integration, two businesses in the same part of the supply chain in the same market, then market penetration should be achieved. Now I need to explain how and why that happens. So for example, if a toy retailer with a market share of 10% buys a close competitor with a market share of 5%, the combined market share of 15%, which is market penetration, increasing our market share, might be further increased if both businesses can achieve revenue synergies. So there's two parts, aren't there, to market penetration here. 10 plus 5 equals 15% market share equals market penetration, because you're the same business now. But also if you achieve these revenue synergies, it might be even bigger. And then, so I try to explain a revenue synergy such as sharing space in their respective toy shops or adding their toys and games to each other's websites, thereby increasing total share in the market. One more example, just to help illustrate the point, the recent merger of O2 and Virgin Media is an example of how two businesses can merge to create a large market share with the potential to offer each other's customers more services, such as broadband and phone contracts, thereby getting more market penetration. So I think that argument does it well. It explains how and why, with some application there in the analysis to explain how external growth can increase market share and therefore achieve market penetration. And my slice of pie, my pie sentence, whilst external growth is often said to be risky, which it is, it has the advantage of speed and it can transform market share with the right deal. So market penetration can be achieved overnight. Just a quick word about that toy retailer example there. You don't have to have an example of revenue synergies, a real life example. All I'm using there is a made up example to help illustrate how revenue synergies work. Yeah. So you don't have to have a specific example of a particular business where they achieved X% of revenue synergies. Most people don't have that. I don't have it. And I keep looking for it. So make it up. Use a situation and then explain that use that to support your analysis. We've also got some nice example there of such as seasoning, as you can see. Such as broadband and phone contracts. That is a great way of adding application. Almost there, folks. Now let's just look at the final piece of the jigsaw for 25 mark of the conclusion. Don't forget, we answer the question, we go back to the question, make sure we've picked up the evaluation hook, answer it, explain why, justify your answer, show some balance, recognize the alternative, but even better if you can, bring in some more application to help add value to your judgment. Here's mine. Overall, in most situations, market penetration is more likely to succeed if it focuses on organic growth. So organic growth is going to be the best method. This is because, or mainly because, organic growth encourages the business to build on its strengths and exploit existing market positions with a variety of tools, such as new products, distribution and promotion. So I'm not bringing in a new argument. I'm simply referring to my previous argument. Now, this is a good time to bring a depend, and it depends on point. So the success of an organic strategy will, of course, depend on several factors, particularly the competitiveness of the business. But don't just say that, say why. Why? Because it'll be harder for a business with a small market share to grow organically unless it has some kind of competitive advantage. And there I might have added in, such as, significantly differentiated products. But anyway, that's fine. And it depends on point, as explained. And now I show some balance. So as we've seen, a big merger can occasionally be really successful in growing market share overnight. So in some situations, external growth might be the best strategy for market penetration. However, and here's my final bit, fast food businesses such as Domino's Pizza and Subway have shown in the UK that rapid growth and higher market shares are possible from an organic growth strategy. And they've not needed takeovers to build their takeaway sales. So there we go, a little bit of application helping to add a little bit of value to my conclusion. There we go. An introduction, two well-developed arguments, one making the case for organic, one making the case for external. Both arguments focused on that wording, the end point, market penetration, and then a conclusion that hopefully we'll agree is decent. It answers the question. It's balanced, it's supported by the previous arguments, and it has that little bit of extra application in to add some value. So hopefully that will be a level 5 response, certainly a decent response. Have a go at that question yourself and see how you get on.